On Sports Minnesota channel. I'm Ben Beacon, the host of the Locked On Wolves podcast, joined by Chalanga Langason of the CND NBA podcast, as well as Zone Coverage. That was a fun one. Chalanga, the Timberwolves beat the Clippers in a roller coaster. I don't even know where to start, really. Where do you want to start?
I guess, first of all, I just want to start with the arena, the atmosphere from the jump. There was a saxophone player that played the national anthem, and from that moment, people were just like rocking. And so, like, just being in the arena, hearing it that loud, like, I honestly am regretting not bringing earplugs because it was like OC out of control. But about the game, seriously, from the beginning, the Clippers did what we expected them to do, and made Karl-Anthony Towns' life very difficult. And he started out the game seemingly frustrated, got in foul trouble early, and that sort of followed him throughout the game. Was that basically what you expected the Clippers to hit Karl-Anthony Towns with?
Absolutely. Yeah. We talked about it a little bit briefly on the postcast on Sunday. Is the Clippers provided the blueprint for how to slow down Karl-Anthony Towns back in November with Nicholas Batum on him, with either when the Wolves try to post him, they either front him with Batum and bring Zubats or other help from the back, or they just play him straight up in the post and they essentially crash down with like three defenders in a lot of cases. And it worked to a T. I was a little disappointed early that the Timberwolves didn't have any more counters for that there wasn't, Chris Finch didn't have something drawn up where they were going for lobs, on the backside or some backside cutters, or maybe just playing Cat more on the perimeter and playing essentially 5 out with Vanderbilt kind of lurking in the dunker spot like they've done at times this season. They tried it a little bit, but not enough in my opinion. So the Clippers did exactly what I expected them to do, and the Timberwolves did not counter until the second half.
Yeah, they didn't. And, the part of that thing is that Cat can break that defense if he hits those perimeter shots, but he also wasn't hitting in the first quarter, and that sort of, mounted on top of the frustration. And so it sort of built on itself to really, neutralize him for a huge part of the game. He did have a nice end of the third quarter, beginning to the fourth. He started playing a little bit more physically, attacking the glass, passing off of drives and assisting a little bit, which was nice to see him sort of like affect the game, even though his shot wasn't falling, which I think is something that I want to see, more moving forward in the playoffs, because it's like every night's not going to be his night. And 7 games against Karl-Anthony Towns, you think Memphis isn't going to try to throw everything that they have at him, So being able to break it in different ways like that is key.
Yeah, I just talked to Peter Bukowski over at the Locked On Today show, and he asked me about the Karl-Anthony Towns, what's the take on Towns after this game? And I said, look, I think there's 2 separate conversations. One is, there's the Karl-Anthony Towns conversation, and we can have that. What does this game mean? But also, there's a lot of facets to it. We can get into it in a second. The separate conversation is the Anthony Edwards / D'Angelo Russell conversation, is just how much those guys came to play. Anthony Edwards was phenomenal. D'Lo had a slow first quarter, but carried the team through the middle stage of the game, second, third quarter, into the fourth quarter when they needed him most. And Anthony Edwards' phenomenal close to the game was really good throughout, actually, and on-ball defense. When he was on Paul George, when he ended up on Island, he was really good on the ball. So let's start there for a minute with Ant and D'Lo. Anything in particular stick out to you at all?
Well, I mean, D'Lo's mid-range was just dropping, and when he can hit that mid-range pull-up, I mean, which is such an essential part of his game, I mean, that opens up his entire offensive flow. And so I feel like over the past month and a half or so, that shot just hasn't been falling. But tonight it did, and D'Lo looks like former All-Star max player D'Angelo Russell when he's hitting that shot.
Absolutely. Before we get to the Towns piece of the conversation and closing this thing out, I want to talk about our friends over at Prize Picks. NBA fans, are you looking for a daily fantasy option for the NBA? Then you need to try the award-winning app Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. It's a fantastic app. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections. You can win up to 10 times in any entry, and it really is just you versus the projected numbers. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's super easy. They have safe and it's safe and offers fast withdrawals. Also mixed sport entries. So on a night like tonight, if you're watching baseball, I know the Twins had some weather over in their game and things I don't think turned out the way that Twins fans wanted them to, but maybe you want to take the over on Byron Buxton home runs or Byron Buxton's runs scored, and you want to take the over on Karl-Anthony Towns rebounds or the over on Ant made 3-pointers. You can mix sports with any sport, NBA, MLB, college football, NFL, when that's in season, MMA, soccer. It's fantastic. For limited time, Prize Picks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all listeners to Locked On shows. Users get $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Picks entry scores a single point, but you must use the code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available to Locked On fans only. Sign up today and use code NBA, $50 for free if a player in your first Prize Picks entry scores a single point. All right, Chalenga, let's talk about Karl-Anthony Towns. A bad game for him, I guess, would be an understatement. I think I'm being a little too measured if I just put it that way, but that's kind of how I roll. 11 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. He had 4 turnovers, fouled out in just 24 minutes, missed his only 2 3-point attempts. I mean, what's your reaction? I take this where you want, whether it's the actual nuts and bolts of the game or what this means in a broader context. Are we going to overreact to this game? Like, of course, the national media, the folks on TNT, and everybody's going to. Where do you want to take this?
Yeah, I think I want to talk about the broader scope of what
Yeah.
this game means, because I didn't watch the TNT broadcast. I did hear that, Shaq was being pretty hard on Karl-Anthony Towns, as he is prone to do. I think that having the opportunity to go into a 7-game series where every game is different, every game, they're going to see, like, Memphis is going to see what works against Karl-Anthony Towns. And like, he's going up against Jaren Jackson Jr. coming up here, and who is a candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. Like you said, the Clippers did sort of figure out like the blueprint, so to speak, but Karl's offensive game is so good that he needs to come up with that retaliation. And in 7 games, there's no doubt in my mind that he and Finch can work together to come up with something that's gonna, bust whatever Memphis can throw at him. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger picture, the narrative stuff, I largely leave that to the folks who like to build the narratives, because, I mean, hey, we're talking about what actually happened in the game.
Yeah.
I think from a Timberwolves fan perspective, the way I look at it, and maybe this is weird and kind of, I guess, a little bit fatalist of me, but, Timberwolves follower, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if the Wolves had lost this game, how much worse would it have been for Towns going into Friday's play-in game, the final play-in game, the true do or die, against the Spurs or the Pelicans? The pressure would have been immense. And now, I mean, obviously you're the 7 seed playing the 2 seed, but you got a whole series to figure this thing out. And Towns did pretty well against the Grizzlies this year. I want to talk about that here in a minute, more specifically. But I don't know that this game really says much about Towns. The Clippers get a second lowest scoring average per game against any opponent this year. The second lowest is against the Clippers. We knew that the Clippers, as you said, know how to slow down Karl-Anthony Towns. Obviously, you could argue it's the worst game he's played, at least in my memory, certainly this season, certainly as long as I can remember. But I don't know that it says that like he's not there for the moment or any of that stuff. I think that's just, that's halftime show fodder more than anything else.
I did see someone tweeted out, I think it was Haberstro. He tweeted that this was Karl-Anthony Towns' first scoreless first quarter of the entire season. And so, I mean, that speaks to his game and like what he is able to do. So we can't let one game, sort of shift what we think about Karl-Anthony Towns moving forward and how he's going to play Memphis.
Exactly. And also it was, I believe I think TNT actually said at halftime that this was the only game of his career he hasn't had a field goal in the first half. He had 2 free throws. He was 0-7 from the field at halftime. So yeah, not great. Okay. I want to close by briefly talking about what this means for the Grizzlies series and also the way that the Wolves kind of celebrated at the end. There's, I haven't watched it all back yet, but I know there's some talk on TNT about, man, they were celebrating like they won the finals. They got the 7 seed. I want to talk about that because I think it's important. It's obviously fresh, and we should talk about it. But before we do that, though, let's talk about our friends over at rockauto.com. This episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry? You have a computer with access to rockauto.com, both at home and in your pocket. You can save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, even up to 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? Rock Auto is a family business that serves do-it-yourselfers and has for over 20 years. You can go explore the easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, right? Locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. All right. About the Wolves at the close of this game, Chalenga, I don't know. It's a 1-game play-in. Like, what do you expect? Like, it basically is do or die. I know you get to play Friday, but it feels like it. everybody would rather play the Grizzlies than the Suns. It doesn't really matter. The Wolves match up fine against the Grizzlies. We'll talk about that in a second. I don't have any problem with the Wolves celebrating like the way that they did. I mean, we're also talking about the Timberwolves franchise. We're talking about a team. And I think if Karl-Anthony Towns doesn't foul out in 24 minutes and maybe it ends a little differently, the emotions would be more in check. But I think it was the mountain they had to overcome on top of all the franchise baggage, on top of the fact that, hey, you did just win a play-in game, a 1-game playoff, essentially. I don't have any problem with it. What about you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because it's not just about this game. Like you said, it's about the whole entire history of the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's about Karl-Anthony Towns' career up to this point of never being able to be the guy on that team to make the playoffs. And granted, not a great game, but they overcame it. They overcame, his foul trouble. They overcame the Clippers' physicality. They overcame Glue Girl, like they.
I hope we not talked about that 10 minutes into this.
I don't know how we haven't gotten to Glue Girl, but let them celebrate. Pat Bev's mom's in the crowd wearing an "I Love Pat Bev" shirt, and like it's beautiful. And I think anybody who has a problem with it, like, is just looking for something to talk about, or has a problem with themselves and is feeling kind of insecure about it.
Yeah, I don't want to turn this all talk radio. So that was my kind of like talk radio ish because everybody's gonna be talking about it tomorrow. They already are on Twitter.
Absolutely.
Last thing against Memphis this year, Karl-Anthony Towns, and we'll break this down further on Locked On Wolves this week, but he averaged 23.3 points, 9.3 rebounds, shot 52% from the field, 38% from three, much better than his season numbers in 3 games against the Clippers. You mentioned Jaren Jackson Jr. That's going to be a ton of fun to watch. I think a lot of people don't realize how good Jaren Jackson Jr. is. Casual fans, maybe folks who haven't watched that much of Memphis this year. He's really good. Obviously, Ja Morant, the Timberwolves have had problems guarding the point of attack all season. So those are the 2 biggest matchups, right? Whoever guards Ja Morant, and can Karl-Anthony Towns stay out of foul trouble, which is going to be we're all going to be talking about this now for the next few days against a team like Memphis. What stands out to you?
I think, the Jaren Jackson and Karl-Anthony Towns matchup is an obvious one. I really am curious to see how Memphis handles Anthony Edwards. Is it going to be Desmond Bane, or we're going to see Dylan Brooks? Like, are they going to, double him after this 30-point performance that we saw tonight? I'm curious of like how much of a threat Anthony Edwards will be in Memphis's mind compared to Karl-Anthony Towns, and how they sort of interplay those 2 like mega offensive threats.
Yeah, agreed. 100%. It's gonna be a lot of fun. We're gonna do a post-game podcast over at Locked On Wolves here still tonight, and also plenty of coverage throughout the week. Eventually a crossover with Locked On Grizzlies, Sean Coleman as well, preparing for Saturday. So that's all we got for you today here on the live postcast. Thank you for joining us, and make sure to subscribe to the show and to Locked On Minnesota on YouTube.
All right.
Thanks,
Ben. Peace.
We'll